What's up, folks? This is Billy from Billy Goes Hiking. If you've wandered to this video, it's probably from my blog, billygoeshiking.com. But the purpose of this video is to talk through all of the gear that I plan to take on my 2021 AT through hike attempt. Gotten a lot of questions from family and friends and colleagues about the stuff that I'm going to bring, and so I figured it'd be cool to do a video just packing up my backpack and talking a little bit about the various pieces of gear that I plan to take. So before we get going, there are a few things that I am planning to take that I won't be packing in this backpack. Reason being, I'm either wearing them or using them. So the first one, the phone, is what's being used to film this video. So that's an iPhone 12 Pro. I was a little bummed. I'd been using an iPhone XS for a few years, and as phones tend to do, it decided to stop holding a charge about 3 weeks ago. So about 7 weeks before I'm going to try and start this crazy hike. So went ahead and got a new phone because the thing that's going to keep me going into towns most frequently is recharging electronics, and we'll talk about all the electronics that I plan to bring. But anyway, that's the phone I'll be taking. The AirPods are what I'm using as a microphone for this video. Hopefully that works. This is the first video that I've ever filmed, so we'll see. But I'll be bringing them along as well. They'll live in the backpack most of the time. I gave some thought as to whether or not I wanted to bring headphones at all. And then once I decided I did, whether I wanted to bring wired or wireless headphones. Obviously, the downside to wireless headphones is you have to recharge them. I ended up deciding it was worth it. And the reason for that is, as you'll see when we talk about the electronics that I plan to bring, the charging cables for the devices that I'm planning to bring are all relatively short. So when I am in town, recharging my phone, recharging my battery, just sitting around doing nothing, I figured it made sense to be able to call people. And that's going to be a lot easier with the wireless headphones as compared to being tethered to something. This watch is not going to be packed in this video today. I'll be wearing it the whole time. It's a Casio F91W. I do have a GPS watch, but I have my phone GPS, and I also have a Garmin that I'll be taking with me. And so a GPS watch on top of all that seemed like a little bit overkill. And it's one more thing to charge. So that's, again, the kind of limiting factor that keeps me going back in town is charging electronics. So that was one where I thought it made sense to reduce. The sunglasses and hat that I'm wearing right now, I'll be taking with me. This is an Outdoor Research Swift cap, and these are Ombra's armless sunglasses. These were a part of a Kickstarter from a couple years ago. Super cool idea. I think I really like the sunglasses so far. Like I said, I've had them for a couple years, but they have a kind of a built-in holder, I guess, or croquis, if you will. Easy to take on and put on and take off. So they're great. And the last thing are my sandals. These are Bedrock Cairn 3D Pro 2, I think, is the model. These are the second pair of Bedrocks that I've owned. I've hiked a ton of miles in my other pair. Nothing was wrong with them per se. They probably have a few hundred miles left on them. Not a lot can go wrong with sandals. People are kind of surprised when I say I'm going to hike in sandals. A lot of folks are asking, what type of hiking boots would I be planning to bring? I like hiking in sandals a lot, but I hike in sandals with socks that have toes because there's a strap that goes down between your big toe and your second toe. And at some point, Bedrock changed their design. The other pair that I have Velcro on the back. Recently, they changed, and I'm sure you can't see it in the video, but they've got kind of this hook closure system around the back. And so when you do wear socks with sandals, anywhere there's Velcro presents a problem and puts a lot of wear and tear on your socks that you probably don't want. But can't say enough good things about Bedrock sandals. I expect that these will last a long time. I know folks that have done long trails with two pairs or even one pair. So I'll replace these when I need it. Like I said, planning to hike the whole thing in sandals. I'm starting pretty early, so it's going to be really cold, hence the socks with the sandals. I think when your feet get wet and when it's really cold outside, boots have a purpose and a place if you're somewhere like the Pacific Northwest or Alaska or somewhere like that. But I think that letting your socks get wet and having a material like wool for your socks that can still keep you warm when they do get wet. Um, they'll dry out, and I'm not too concerned about it. So I could change my mind about that when I get out there. There's plenty of places along the AT to buy a pair of trail runners if needed. But I'm going to try for the sandals starting out. I think if I can make it through the first, 6 weeks, 2 months ish, hopefully it'll warm up a little bit, and then the sandals will just be perfect. Okay, so that's all the stuff that I am not planning to pack today, but that I am planning to take with me. So now let's start talking about the stuff that I do plan to take with me. So I'm going to try and structure this video by actually packing my backpack. The way that I'm going to do that makes it a little bit different from the Lighterpack posting. That'll be in the description for this video, and it's also linked or hopefully embedded on the blog post. Haven't set that up yet, but you can go and look on that site. It's really neat. It'll show you all of these items individually weighed in terms of the number of grams that they weigh. And then it's also kind of sectioned off by the different categories of components. So like water treatment, hygiene, first aid, technology, those sorts of things. That's not going to be the exact same categorization that I walk through stuff today. Just because, like I said, I am going to be packing my backpack, and it's not necessarily like, okay, and then I pack my technology, and then I pack my, whatever. But it's a cool kind of reference point. So if you want to see any of these individual items, pretty much everything is linked to the website where you could purchase those things yourself if you wanted to, with the exception of stuff like a smart water bottle, because I didn't think it was really that valuable to have a link to Walmart.com or something where you can buy a smart water bottle, because you can get them in any gas station or convenience store. So if you look at the Lighterpack, you'll see that my base pack weight right now is 10 pounds and 12 ounces. So let's talk about what that means for a little bit, and then we'll dive into the actual gear. So in the sport or hobby, whatever, of long distance backpacking, there's this notion of base pack weight. There's really kind of three categories of items that you'll carry. There's stuff that's your base pack weight, there's stuff that's worn weight, and then there's consumables. So I'll start with the third one and then work my way backwards, because that's probably the easiest to explain. Consumables are food and water and fuel. I guess you could argue that some of the hygiene and first aid type stuff falls into that category, but I don't think it matters that much. It's just stuff that you're going to be actually like using while you're out there. The second category, worn weight. So these are things that are not going to be in my backpack, but that I will be carrying or wearing on a daily basis. So that's things like the clothes that I'll actually be hiking in, my trekking poles, my sandals, sunglasses, hat, those sorts of things. And so then everything else falls under the category of base pack weight. It's kind of a faulty metric a little bit, because I was joking with one of my friends the other day. If I had pants with pockets, my base pack weight could be considerably lower, because I could put things like my phone or my battery that weigh quite a bit in the pockets of my pants and make them worn weight instead of base pack weight. People like to compare base pack weights, but at the end of the day, you're carrying whatever you're carrying in totality, including the things you're going to consume, including the things that you wear. It's just the way that you carry them is a little bit different, and the way that you use them is a little bit different. So I'm really happy with this setup. There's a couple of areas that I probably could stand to go a little bit lighter, but I don't want to. I think this stuff is going to allow me to be at a level of comfort that I'm excited about. And I also think that this setup, for the most part, would be the same stuff that I would take for a weekend trip. And I'll talk a little bit about my backpack. I'd probably do a couple things differently with the backpack itself. But on the whole, this is a pretty similar setup to what I would just generally take on backpacking trips as a whole, whether it be a weekend trip or a week-long trip or something like this, where it's the AT and it's going to be 6 months. So that's what those terms mean. That's where the weights come from. I don't have the weights of all these items memorized by any stretch. So again, if you're interested in knowing the number of grams that some of these things actually weigh, you can go check out that Lighterpack page. I weighed everything out. There's a couple of things that we'll talk about where the scale was not sensitive enough to pick them up. So you'll see the scale, like in the picture, reads 0 grams. And that's what I recorded it as. So there is a little bit of fluctuation there, because nothing weighs 0 grams. So things like Ziploc bags or my toothbrush are probably like 3 grams a piece or something like that. But they didn't get ultimately recorded in that 10 pounds and 12 ounces. So who knows? It may be closer to 11 pounds in total. Again, who really cares? Because the whole warm weight base pack thing is a little bit contrived. So I'm going to start out with my backpack. So this is the Gossamer Gear Gorilla 40-liter backpack. If you were to buy this backpack today from Gossamer Gear, it would be a little bit different. So this is actually now the version they manufacture is a 50-liter backpack. I don't know where the extra space comes from. It's got a few pockets, pockets on the side, a big mesh pocket on the front or the back, depending on what your orientation is, and then just one big pocket in here. There's room for a hydration bladder. I don't use hydration bladders, but it's in there. A couple other things to note about this pack. It's got an aluminum frame stay that I'll pull out here real quick. So this fits in the back of the backpack. This rests up against your back. And it just attaches with Velcro inside the backpack itself. It's a little bit easier to mess with when there's actually stuff in it. But let me see if I can get it back in here. There we go. It's got an attachable hip belt. It's got pockets, zipper pockets that you can actually reach while you're hiking. I like these a lot. This is an example of an area where I definitely could go lighter. This backpack is probably a little bit more substantial than what I need based on the stuff that I'm going to carry. However, I've had it for 5 or 6 years now. I don't see a single stitch that's loose. I think it's the best backpack in the world. Gossamer Gear is awesome. They make awesome products. Definitely recommend checking it out. If you're interested in lightening up your backpacking load, they have larger capacity backpacks like the Mariposa and the Silverback that would be really good entries into ultralight hiking if that's something that you're interested in. The other thing about this backpack that wouldn't, I guess there's two things that wouldn't come standard if you were going to buy one today. So the first thing is you'll see, I'll show it to you here in a second, but my, I guess, secondary sleeping pad is an 8-inch foam pad that's also made by Gossamer Gear. And it actually fits into the back of this backpack. If you were to buy one, it comes with a thicker kind of egg carton looking sit pad, which is great. I still have mine, but I like that the 1/8-inch foam pad, I can fold it up and unfold it, and it has more uses than just a sit pad. The other thing, so I've got two, and these are actually new to me for this trip. I've tested them out a little bit, but I haven't taken them on a long distance hike. These are also made by Gossamer Gear. They fit really well with, I assume, all of their backpacks, but they're called bottle rockets. And so I think historically or typically you would see folks carrying their water bottles in these big side pockets. The thing that I don't like about that is it's kind of difficult to reach back while you're hiking without taking your backpack off and get water. These sleeves on the shoulder straps can hold my water bottles so that I can just reach over and sip out of one or pull it out really easily. So I've got two of those. I really only need one of them because you don't need to actively be drinking out of two water bottles at once. However, the other thing that I like, at least conceptually, because like I said, I haven't put a ton of time testing these out, is the weight distribution. So having that weight of the water on the front of your body, balancing out some of the weight that's going to be on the back of your body, I think in theory is going to make things a little bit more comfortable. But that said, if I only had one, then I feel like I'd feel a little bit off balance. So I went ahead and went with two, and obviously that's a little bit of a weight penalty in doing so. And I may get out there and hate these and switch to putting it in the side pockets and just deal with having to take my backpack off more frequently or reach awkwardly back there to try and get water. TBD, we'll see. But I'm really excited to test them out more. So this is the backpack. I guess I'll go ahead and show you this 1/8-inch foam pad that I was talking about. So this is folded over 5 times, and this is the width to fit in the backpack. I had to cut it down a little bit, but you can see it unfolds and it's actually pretty long. I'll talk here in a second about my sleep system, but I think that this foam pad is going to be crucial to making sure that my other sleeping pad is well protected and doesn't get poked by anything or puncture, because it is an air-based sleeping pad, or inflatable, I guess. So anyway, This thing folds up, and it has a lot of other uses. It'll be good to keep things from sliding around. So this will go between my inflatable pad and either the floor of my bivy or this polycro ground sheet, depending on whether or not I'm using the bivy on a given night. The bivy is kind of to protect from bugs. So early on, when it's not as buggy, I may not use it. It's also got kind of a bathtub floor to protect from some rain splashing. So if it's raining really hard, I might use it as well for that purpose. But in any case, this will go between my air pad and whatever is directly beneath it so that I won't slide around as much. So like I said, this fits into the body of the backpack itself. And you kind of got to force it in there, which is fine. I like to kind of get it square on the bottom and then put it in the top. And similarly to the frame stay, this is easier to do when there's actually stuff in the backpack because it gives it a little bit more structure and shape. But anyway, I may mess with that a little bit more as we actually start packing the bag. But something like that. So this will go against my back. It offers even more kind of support, a little bit more comfort. This backpack is awesome. It's super comfortable. And I think that the pad and the frame stay have a lot to do with that. So definitely could be some weight savings. This, all said and done, is probably right around 2 pounds with the bottle rockets. Probably just under 2 pounds without it. I think if you were going to buy a new one, it would maybe be like right at 2 pounds. They're, I think, a little bit heavier than maybe they used to be. But again, worth every ounce. Really, really great backpack. So the next thing that would go in this backpack is my sleep system. So the first thing right here is my quilt. So this is an Enlightened Equipment Revelation quilt. I tried to go back and look up what it's rated for. A lot of the stuff that you're going to see is manufactured by what are referred to as cottage companies, cottage gear manufacturers. So it's not something generally that you're going to be able to go buy at Academy Sports or REI or anywhere like that. It's usually buying directly from these companies. And a lot of times it's one person or a handful of people that are making this stuff by hand. So I say that because I'm sure that there is a temperature rating for this quilt, but I don't know what it is. And even if I knew it, it probably wouldn't be all that helpful of a metric, just because the cottage companies don't necessarily do the same testing as like Marmot or Kelty or North Face might do, or at least they don't have like the same standards. So this is another area where I'll be excited to see if this works out. I think that, again, the first few weeks or even first few months are going to be really cold. So I'd prefer to not have to buy another quilt when I'm out there, but it's not outside of the realm of possibility at this point. I keep saying quilt, and if you're watching this video and you're not familiar with ultralight backpacking, you might be thinking, what is a quilt? I don't see a sleeping bag. So the quilt is what I use in place of a sleeping bag. And hopefully I'll have time before I actually go hiking to do another video specifically on kind of my shelter setup and sleep system. But quilts are super popular in the ultralight backpacking community. The idea is basically when you think about a sleeping bag or really any other insulated piece of equipment, so whether that be a jacket or a sleeping bag or down pants or down booties, whatever, the way that they work is whatever materials in them, whether it be down or something synthetic, that insulation has loft to it. And so it creates air pockets that the heat from your body warms up those air pockets, and then that comes back and keeps you warm. It's not really that it's generating new heat. It's just helping you keep the heat that your body produces on your body so that you stay warm. So when you think about a sleeping bag, right, if you're laying down on it, the part that your back is laying on is compressed. And when insulation gets compressed like that, when it doesn't have that loft, it can't insulate. So when you think of a quilt, you're probably thinking of like a rectangle. And this is sort of like that, but the way that I'll be using it, especially when it's cold, will be configured closer to a sleeping bag where there's a V cut out of the back. So my foot box will still be closed. There's a zipper and some snaps that keep it fastened, probably from my knees down, because there's not a lot of pressure down there as much as your upper body. My back will be directly on my inflatable sleeping pad. So this quilt is already in 2 nyloflume bags. I don't know what nyloflume is used for outside of the backpacking community, but I'm sure that it has some sort of use and somebody realized, hey, this would be useful for backpacking. It's waterproof, it's super lightweight, and I have 2 of them that I use as pack liners. So this Gossamer Gear Gorilla backpack is not waterproof. There are some backpacks that are waterproof, and if I was using a waterproof backpack, I may not use 2 of these. I may just use 1 or even none. But because this quilt is filled with down, if down gets wet, it rapidly loses its ability to insulate. So it's really important that it stays dry. So the way that I am protecting against that is I've got these 2 nyloflume bags. Pick these up from Gossamer Gear. You can also use, I've seen where people use like trash compactor bags or turkey bags. But I was just picking up a bunch of small stuff from Gossamer Gear and threw these in there. They were a couple of bucks. So there will be 2 layers of waterproof material between my quilt and everything around it. And really the backpack, I mean, I say it's not waterproof. It definitely will keep water off for a certain amount of time, but if it's raining for a long period of time or, heaven forbid if I were to drop it into a body of water or something like that, it definitely would not hold up then. So this stuff, I don't use any stuff sacks these days, which I think is kind of a pretty popular school of thought in the ultralight backpacking community, because anything, particularly insulating items, it's never really good to compress them, even if you need to in a backpacking situation for certain durations of time. But really the idea is I'm just going to let this fill up whatever space in my backpack it needs to fill up. And then the stuff that I put on top of it's going to press it down however much it needs to press it down. So my backpack's always going to be full, but that doesn't mean it can't necessarily take more stuff. So no stuff sack in the nyloflume bags. This will just go into the bottom of my backpack. I also like having the quilt at the bottom of my backpack. Obviously for packing and unpacking, that's beneficial because usually the quilt's going to be the last thing that I'm going to get out for the day, and it'll be the first thing that I'm going to want to put away. So keeping it in the bottom is nice, and it also is comfortable. So I'll have something soft and kind of plushy up against my back. And obviously this has been out of the backpack for a little bit, so it doesn't want to go back in, because as soon as you give down space, down will occupy that space. But this is just going to fit here in this main compartment of the backpack. And I may need to stand up to get it in there all the way, but ideally I won't, because then you won't be able to see me. So I'm going to try to do this sitting down. There we go. So that just goes all the way down to the bottom. And then let me see if I can get these nyloflume bags back up toward the top so we can put more stuff in them. That will work. The other thing that I put down with my quilt in the kind of most protected area is my sleeping pad. So this also came with some sort of stuff sack or carrying case, but similarly, I don't see a purpose in bringing it unless you really need to compress the volume, and I don't because I have enough room in my backpack. This is the Thermarest Neo Air Uber Light. I've been using a Neo Air X Light for probably 3 or 4 years. It looks similar to this one, except it's bigger. Not bigger when it's rolled out. I don't know if it is or not, but bulkier. It takes up more room and has a little bit more insulation. So there's some mylar sheets inside the baffles, whereas the Uberlight does not have that. So it's a little bit less insulating. Again, hopefully the foam pad and whatever other layers are underneath it will add a little bit more warmth, especially during the early weeks and months of the hike. This thing, I just roll up and keep a rubber band around it. You inflate it with your mouth. It's pretty large. This is the large size. I got the large size really for the width. My shoulders, I don't want them to be falling off the edges of the pad. I really don't need the entire length. It's not super crucial to have something under your feet as much as it is having something under your torso. But unfortunately, they don't make a version that's short and wide. I've thought about there's all types of guides and tutorials online of how you can trim these things down and melt off the portion that you actually need. But it was kind of pricey, and I figure, especially early on when it's going to be really cold, I'll just keep a full thing. If it's bugging me how heavy it is in my backpack, which I doubt because it's very lightweight, I may try to trim it down some point in the future. So that's going to go again with the quilt in the 2 layers of nyloflume bag. It doesn't really matter whether or not this thing gets wet. In fact, some people like to use them as rafts, play around in the river, whatnot. But I keep it down there for protection because it's super, super thin. When you inflate it, you can see through it, which makes me a little bit nervous in terms of puncturing it. My old sleeping pad, I poked a hole in with a tent stake probably 6 months ago and patched it up. It's not a huge deal, but I would rather limit the opportunities for it to get poked, especially in my backpack with something stupid like a tent stake. So I keep that down with the quilt, and those are the only 2 things that I'm keeping in that innermost nyloflume bag. So what I'll do, and one of the bags came a little bit loose, which is fine. So what I'll do then is kind of wrap off the top of that innermost nyloflume bag and just press it down. And then we'll pack other stuff on top of it. So the next grouping of things that are going to go in the bag will have the 1 layer of waterproofing from the nyloflume bag, which is great. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about, I guess it's not next because it's still a part of the sleep system, but the next piece of gear that I'm going to talk about is the bug bivy. So I have a modular sleep setup, and what that means is if it's nice outside, if the wind's not blowing too hard, if it's not raining, and there's no bugs around, I may just sleep on top of that inflatable pad, on top of this piece of polycro ground sheet with the foam pad in between them and my quilt, and just do what's called cowboy camping and not have anything over me or around me. That's a really fun way to sleep outside. You get to really connect with nature, and it's fun to have the sun wake you up. But obviously, that's not always going to be the case. So when it rains, I've got a piece of gear over here that I'm going to talk about in a little bit that's going to protect me from the rain. And when there are bugs, I've got this bug bivy that's going to protect me from any bugs biting me. So this is the Bora Gear ultralight bug bivy. Bora Gear is another cottage company. A guy named John runs it, and he is an American treasure. I would highly recommend buying gear from Bora Gear. It's awesome. A bivy is a sleep system, and there's a lot of different variations of it. So some people will take a bivy that's waterproof, that they zip themselves inside of, and that's their only piece of protection from the elements. And obviously, that would protect from rain, that would protect from bugs, that would protect from sun and wind, everything. The idea of that makes me a little bit claustrophobic. This is a bug bivy, so it's got sil nylon on the bottom, and when you actually put stuff in it, and when you fasten, I've got little attach points on the head and the foot that fastens it, so it almost takes on kind of like a tent-like shape. And it's got this really thin no-seam bug mesh on the top. So I would zip myself into this. The bottom of it kind of bathtubs up and gives you a little bit of splash protection if it is raining. So even if there aren't a lot of bugs, but it's raining really hard, I may use it in conjunction with that tarp over here we're going to talk about in a second. But it's great. It's really lightweight. It fits my needs well, and it presses down pretty small. The one thing I'll note, so I'm going to pack this into my backpack right now. When I'm actually out on the trail, if it has been raining or if it gets like super gross or dirty or whatever, I may keep it in this outside mesh pocket for part or all of the day to let it dry out. Anything in this mesh, it's got little grommets at the bottom for water to drain out. The mesh itself is sun can get in there, water can escape from there. If it's inside the backpack, if it's inside the nyloflume, that's not going to happen. So it may spend some time out here, but I'm going to pack it in the backpack for the purposes of this video. And this is where it'll be when I'm starting out hiking, at least on day 1. Who knows, it may be wet every day after that. We'll see. Again, this came with some sort of stuff sack or carrying sack, but Who needs it, right? It doesn't really serve a purpose, and this is still adequately protected. Um, so the next stuff that I'm going to talk about are my clothes. That's what's going to go on top of the bivy inside the backpack. Some of this stuff, again, is worn weight. Some of this stuff is base pack weight, and the distinction there is the stuff I'm going to wear every day hiking versus the stuff that I'm going to pull out when I need it, but it's going to live in the backpack for most of the time. So starting out, I anticipate that I'll be hiking in my base layer. Um, I may end up picking up another base layer at one of the first stops because I've never had a problem hiking and sleeping in the same clothes, but a lot of people do, and I'm sure that I'm wrong about that. I just probably haven't been subjected to harsh enough conditions for it to make a big difference. But when it's really cold and it's really wet, it definitely is nice to change into dry clothes. So may pick up an extra set of base layer, but this is my base layer. It's a pair of leggings and I don't know if you call this a sweater or just like a crew neck long sleeve shirt. Um, they're both made by Patagonia. They're both part of the Capilene line of base layers. This is the Capilene lightweight tights. I don't know that they make these anymore. I feel like they just changed the name from Capilene lightweight to Capilene something else. But they're great. Kind of just long underwear. And then this is a part of, I'm really excited about this. This is relatively new to me. This is part of the Capilene Air line. So this is a mixture, a blend of merino wool and some synthetics. And what they do is they like puff it full of air somehow or blow air through it so that it gets these, it has some loft to it as an insulating garment, which is a bit unique for a base layer, but it still breathes really well. So these things will be closest to my body. Um, if I'm feeling modest, I may throw on my 1 inch shorts, and I'm joking about being modest because they're obviously pretty small. But those could go on top of the tights, or when it gets warmer outside, I'll plan on just wearing these and hopefully throwing those in the backpack. This is my hiking shirt. It's a sorry, this is made by BOA, by the way. This is a Columbia Silver Ridge Light hiking shirt. It's really lightweight. It's got UPF, which is sun protection in clothing. Um, I definitely, especially for this long of a period being exposed to the sun, both for weight reasons as well as for health reasons, I would like to minimize the amount of sunscreen that I need to use. So that's why I've got a long sleeve hiking shirt. I've got a hat. I've got a buff that I'll show you here in a second that I can cover up, with a physical barrier as opposed to a chemical barrier. And it's good too because that means I can bring less sunscreen and use sunscreen less often. It's not super good for the environment, especially if you're going to be getting in bodies of water. So those are the clothes, especially early on, that I'll kind of be hiking in on a daily basis. And those will just sit atop this bivy for now. Obviously, when I'm actually hiking, these things will be on my body, but I'm going to pack all this stuff in the backpack for today's video. So those will just go right in there. These are a pair of gloves. So these are made by Z-Packs. Or at least sold by Z-Packs. I don't know who actually manufactures them. They're made with possum down. And I'm going to say something that I don't know for sure if it's true, but it's what I've heard, so I'm going to say it. And if it's wrong, you can tell me, and I'll stop saying it. But my understanding is this is a mixture of merino wool and possum down, which possums, like the animal that you're thinking of, apparently their fur has it's hollow. It has air in it, and so supposedly that offers a little bit better warmth to weight ratio as opposed to if these were just wool. Um, but again, correct me if I'm wrong because I very well could be. These are a pair of Injinji wool socks. I'm actually going to be taking 2 pairs, but I left one of them in Birmingham the last time I was there, so my dad's mailing those to me. The reason I'll have 2 pairs, I definitely want to be able to take off wet socks when I get to camp at night and put on dry socks, especially if it's cold. These are toe socks, so they'll work with the sandals, and they go probably mid-calf. I may switch when it gets a little warmer outside, or may send 1 pair home altogether if I find that I'm hiking in just sandals on a daily basis. But I'm going to start out with 2 pairs. They're pretty heavy duty, all things considered. Love Injinji socks. They're awesome. I wish Darn Tough made toe socks, but they don't, at least to my knowledge. So Injinji it is. This is a beanie. It's just like a cashmere beanie that I had from some point in time when I thought it was a good idea to buy a cashmere beanie, but it's warm and it's lightweight, so I'll have that. It's another example of an item that I may send home at some point. This is the Buff I was talking about earlier. So Buff is actually the brand. This is just a neck gaiter. Let's see if I can get it over my hat here. So this is how it's worn. This one is made of wool. It's made for cold weather. I have one of the Buff UV ones that are a lot lighter weight, and I may switch to that later on when it gets a little warmer outside. Because this keeps me pretty warm, almost like a scarf would. Obviously, don't need that when it gets warmer, but when it does get warmer, this thing becomes really useful to keep the sun off the back of your neck and the front of your neck. And I've seen a lot of creative ways to wear them, kind of tuck them in the back of your hat so that it drapes over the back of your neck and doesn't constrict you quite as much. I guess I should put that in the backpack. And I'm realizing that probably generated a ton of noise because I'm using the AirPods as a microphone. So apologies. I'll stick that in there. These are a pair of wind pants that are made by Enlightened Equipment. So the same folks that made my quilt also made these pants. They are the Copperfield wind pants. I could be wrong about this, but I think that these weigh less than my deck of cards that I'll talk about in a little bit. They're super, super lightweight. If you have on the tights and then you have these on top of that, you can actually get to pretty cold temperatures and be comfortable. Because similarly to some of the lofted garments, there is kind of a pocket of air between the tights and the wind pants, and then obviously they keep wind off as well. So even though they're not warm in and of itself, they can provide more warmth than you're probably imagining. These will also be really useful. So these will never go directly against my skin. I say that may be false, but at least early on, they won't go directly against my skin. So I'll plan to wear these when I go into town and do laundry, which will be an interesting experience because my plan is to wear these wind pants and this poncho tarp that I'll tell you about in a second. So probably get some funny looks, but I guess those towns along the trail are probably used to goobers wearing funny looking stuff. And then I think this is the last clothing item. There's some gloves, but anyway. So this is the Nunatak. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But that's how I'm going to say it. Nunatak JMT pullover. This has synthetic insulation rather than down. So all that means is there's some sort of man-made insulating layer. This I think is Apex Climate Shield. Could be wrong about that. I don't know. Nunatak is awesome. This jacket went out of stock, and I emailed them desperately saying, hey, please, will you make me one of these? I really want to take it on my AT through hike attempt in 2021. And they said, absolutely, fill out this form. We'll make it for you. Worked with me on custom sizing. I'm a funny shaped dude, and I don't want to waste a lot of fabric. And it also, I have to get, XLs or whatever to make the sleeves long enough. But then the body is really loose. And for something that's insulating, I don't want to have it being super loose around my midsection because, if a draft comes in or if it's not, closer to your body, you lose some of that insulating power. So super, super stoked on this one. If you can't tell, I like the color purple. They were able to accommodate a custom order on that. And a lot of these cottage companies will do custom stuff if you ask them to, which is awesome. And that thing can pack down super small, but again, the goal is not necessarily to pack stuff down as small as possible. It's just to pack stuff down as small as you need it so that you can fit everything in your backpack. So I'm going to, similarly to the first Nilo Flume bag, I'm just going to kind of roll that up on the top. I'm going to push this stuff down a little bit to make some extra room, but we still got a good amount of room left here for the rest of the stuff that's going to go in the main body of the pack. So I'm just going to kind of work this way to that way. And start packing this stuff that isn't necessarily going to go in the main body. Some of it will, but for the most part, we've kind of got the main body pretty full. This is the Garmin InReach Mini GPS device. So this was a requirement from my wife if I wanted to attempt this through hike, was I had to take this little bad boy with me. It doesn't weigh a lot, and it's really cool. It can pair with your phone. You do have to have a subscription plan, which kind of sucks, but the stuff that it can do is really neat. So like let's say I didn't have cell signal right now, I can hit a button on this, and as long as I've got visibility to the sky, it'll send my wife Glory a text message that has my GPS position. And there's a number of preset messages on there where I can say, hey, I'm safe, or hey, I'm safe, but I'm not going to camp here, or I'm not safe, I'm about to hit the SOS button. It does have an SOS feature, so you can alert the authorities in case something's gone really, really wrong. Hopefully not going to be pressing that button. There's a lot of attachment points on this backpack that I could probably strip off some of and save a little bit of weight, but it's at that point, I'd rather have them and not need them than need them and not have them if I want to clip stuff to the outside of the backpack. So that's where this thing lives. The other cool thing, this little carabiner is actually a part of my sleep system. So at night, I'll have the inReach next to me underneath my shelter. And then this carabiner is what I use to clip the attachment point that I was telling you about earlier on my bivy up to the underside of the tarp. So that keeps it off my face, because that bug mesh will keep bugs off, but if it's touching your skin, that can actually bite you through the bug mesh. So there's different ways to deal with that. You can wear a hat to kind of keep it off your face, but the attachment point is really great because it also makes you feel a little bit less claustrophobic being zipped inside that thing, and just pulls that fabric up off your face. So this next, this blue bag here, this is a DCF bear bag from Z-Packs. It's also got a little carabiner on it that's a part of the bear bagging kit. Could use that carabiner for other things if I needed to. It's got a Velcro kind of roll top closure. This bag is waterproof. This is where all my food is going to go. There's a couple things that I keep in here that are part of my food kit. So the first one, this is, it's not ice cream, gelato. So these gelato jars, my wife likes gelato, so it worked out well. She was able to buy one and eat the gelato. And then I like it because this is what I'll be using to cook my food. I'm going to be cold soaking, so you'll notice there's no stove here. I won't be cooking over campfire or anything like that. I don't have any containers that could handle that type of temperature. But for things like oatmeal or ramen or any type of dehydrated food, you don't actually have to cook that stuff. It just generally tastes better when you use hot water. You can use cold water or room temperature water. So I'll put stuff in here with some water, first thing in the morning, and then it'll be ready to eat a couple hours later, or put it in the night before and let it soak. So this is my cold soaking jar. And then this is the bear line. So the bear situation on the AT, it's black bears, which are already not super scary. They're kind of just like big varmints. But I do plan to hang my bag at night using the PCT method. And if I have time, I may shoot a video on what that means, but you can Google search it. There's tons of videos about it. So I'll be hanging this bag of food away from where I'm camping at night with this line. The other use for this line is, I'll show you in a second, all the guy lines that I'm planning to use for my shelter. They are 1.5 millimeters. I think that's the diameter. I'm not sure if it's the diameter or the radius or what. This is 2.5 millimeter, and this is a lot easier to work with than that stuff is. That stuff kind of knots when you don't want it to and doesn't knot when you want it to. This stuff's a little bit easier to use. So if I got into a situation where it's really cold and I don't have the dexterity in my hands to be able to tie some of the knots that I need to tie with that narrower guy line, I could cut this up and use it for guy line in a sticky situation, and then pick up some more regular diameter guy line for the next town or next spot. So I'm going to get the air out of that and just roll it shut, so it just rolls down, and then you fold it over and buckle it. Obviously, this is going to be full with food, so it's going to take up a lot more room in my backpack. But like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the stuff that's taking up a lot of room in this backpack doesn't actually need all the space that it's taking up. It's just an insulating garment or my quilt, where it's going to be as big as you let it be. So I'm not too concerned about space when that is filled with food. And there also won't be as many articles of clothing in there, because I'll be wearing a lot of them while I'm hiking, and certainly will be wearing a lot of them when I'm at camp or sleeping. Like that jacket takes up a lot of room. But I'll definitely be wearing it at night, maybe sometimes be wearing it when I'm hiking, depending on how fast I'm going. This next little wound up piece of guy line, And it's not little, it's actually the longest one that I'm bringing. So this will be my clothes line. One of the things that I'm definitely not concerned about, but definitely aware of is I'll be wearing the same clothes every day. And I'll be doing a lot of stuff that makes me sweat a lot, and I'll be doing a lot of stuff that gets those clothes dirty. And that's not super good for fabrics in general, for articles of clothing, especially that Patagonia Capilene Air shirt. That's the one thing that I've read some reviews on that are a little bit negative, is that the durability of that particular garment isn't awesome. So I say all that because if you regularly clean your clothes, they'll last a lot longer. So I am bringing this piece of guy line to use as a clothesline. I've got a knot tied into one end of it, just a bowline loop, and can use this to throw it up pretty quickly. So I'll actually be keeping this in one of these big side pockets with some of the other cleaning or hygiene, whatever you want to call it, items that I'll be taking with me. These are rain mitts that are made by Mountain Laurel Designs. They're made of a fabric called Event. That's like a 3-layer, not unlike Gore-Tex. It's really similar to probably what your rain jacket's made out of if you have one. But these are just mittens. They're a little bit stuck together. So these can be worn, without anything underneath them if it's just rainy, if it's warm outside. They can also be worn with my gloves underneath if it is cold and wet. I had to seam seal these, and that was my first foray into seam sealing anything. It was terrifying. I almost did a blog post just on that, but I thought it'd be kind of confusing. These are cool. You can just tighten them up like that, so they do kind of cinch shut, and these are fully waterproof, but the Event fabric is relatively breathable for a waterproof fabric. So you're not going to get like super clammy hands in here, and you still have a lot of that dexterity because it is a mitten. So 2 of those. These live in the outside pocket, this big mesh pocket that I was telling you about earlier, just because they're going to get wet and I want to be able to dry out. This next group of stuff is stuff that goes in the brain of my backpack. So I'm trying to look and see if I have anything else that needs to go in the main body of the backpack. I do, but it'll be the last thing. So I'm going to close it shut for a little bit, just to more easily access the top compartment. So this backpack closes like that. It doesn't like roll top close or anything. It just kind of folds over. And then in the top here, you have this brain. It's not a detachable brain. I should really just call it like a lid. There was a while where Gossamer Gear did manufacture this backpack. I think it was like 2017, 2018 maybe, where it had like a fully separate detachable brain, which a lot of backpacks have. I don't like that. I'm really glad that they went back to how this one is. But effectively, there's a zipper pocket here, and you can keep some stuff up in the top. So the stuff that I'm keeping up here, first thing, it's a mini deck of cards in the spirit of keeping things lightweight. It's in a little Ziploc bag just so that the water doesn't get to it. Again, even though this backpack isn't waterproof, it's fairly water resistant, so I'm not too worried about it. And I also have a harmonica, so the cards in the harmonica will be the things that keep me occupied. I don't play the harmonica well right now, but I'm hoping when I do a gear recap video at the end of my hike, whenever that may be, hopefully I'll be able to play some tunes for you. This is a bug head net made by a company called Bins. They make a lot of different bug prevention products. Actually, I've got some bug spray made by them that we'll talk about here in a second. This thing, it's got a little, I don't know what you'd call that, but you can pull it tight. So this just goes over your head like that, and you have to wear a hat, again, to keep the actual fabric from touching your face, and then you can tighten it up, put it inside your shirt, whatever. I don't know if this is supposed to go on the front or the back, but anyway. So when it does get warmer outside and I get a little further north and the bugs start getting to be a more serious concern, definitely going to be wearing that more. I'll also be treating all of this stuff with permethrin, which is a chemical. It's a pesticide used in agriculture quite a bit, but you can treat fabrics with it. And then if bugs like ticks especially or mosquitoes land on that fabric, it's not good. They can like die from just touching it. but it doesn't hurt humans once it's dry, so it's great. So I'm going to treat pretty much everything that I've shown so far in that stuff. One of the big concerns on the AT is Lyme disease. There are ticks, and especially when you get into like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York, ticks that have a high rate of carrying Lyme disease, and that can be pretty serious. So it's not really something that I'm interested in messing around with. Again, it goes back to I've got a long sleeve shirt, I've got those wind pants if I need to put them on. I'd rather not use bug spray unless I really needed it. So have some physical barriers to keep the bugs away and have that bug bivvy for the nighttime. Another thing that's going to go up in this top compartment, this is a Crystal Light container. So like the little pouches that you mix up with water and make a pitcher of Crystal Light. This is one of those I've taken the label off of. It's just got a little lid here. This is my glasses case. So I won't be wearing my sunglasses at night. I'll probably at least have them around my neck most days. But I also have my optical glasses for reading at night. And there's a little microfiber cloth in there as well. Could probably do without the microfiber cloth. Most of my stuff is synthetic or wool that probably wouldn't scratch up glasses lenses, but I just think a microfiber cloth does a much better job. And it's not really something that's worth, I think it weighs like 5 grams. So there's no sense, in my opinion, in not bringing that. So I'm trying to think if anything else. Oh yeah, there's one other thing that's going to go in this top compartment, and that is this pillow. It's Big Sky is the manufacturer. It's called the Dream Sleeper Inflatable Pillow. And actually, I'm sorry if this noise is terrible. I don't really know what it's going to sound like on the video, but I'll go ahead and blow it up just to show you what it's like. And there you go. I hate that it's clear because you can see how gross it is, but I've had this thing for a couple years now, and no punctures. It feels like it's like almost like a Ziploc bag. You might think, hey, like sleeping on that weird plastic material probably isn't super comfortable. I agree. On nights when it's not freezing cold, I will probably take that buff that I showed you earlier and use it as a pillowcase, and then it'll be just like sleeping at home. Some people don't bring pillows, or they stuff their clothes into a stuff sack and use that as a pillow. I just think having an actual pillow does so much for my comfort that it's absolutely worth the 2.5 ounces or whatever, however much this thing weighs. And again, this is going to go in this top compartment. So somewhat similarly to the innermost compartment of my backpack, this top compartment has stuff that I'm worried about its durability. So that includes obviously this pillow. That includes the bug net, not necessarily from being punctured, but it can easily tear if it gets caught on something, and then it wouldn't be very effective as a bug net. So keep that stuff up here. Hopefully the harmonica doesn't rip anything up or poke holes in anything. But I also want to have anything that's up here, I want to be pretty easy to access because it's much easier to take my backpack off and unzip this than it is to go digging around in the main body here. So that is all the stuff that's going to go in the lid or the brain of the backpack, whatever you want to call it. The rest of this stuff that you see here, with the exception of this ditty bag, and that's, I guess, the last thing that we'll talk about, everything else is going to go somewhere on the outside of the backpack. So there's this big mesh pocket. It's got an elastic kind of entryway to keep stuff in there. I've already put the rain mitts in there. There's a ton of room in this pocket, especially because this mesh is also stretchy. So you can really jam a lot of stuff in there. And actually, this polycro ground sheet's going to go in there too, but I guess I'll put that in last since everything's sitting on it. But let's start loading the outside of the backpack. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is water management. And with that, there's kind of a few categories of things. So the first thing you'll see, I've got 3 water bottles here. 2 of them are 1 liter smart water bottles. One of them is a half a liter smart water bottle. I love smart water bottles for hiking. I think that they were one of the earlier iterations of trying to carry water more lightly. There definitely are other options on the market now that are even lighter than a smart water bottle. There's a company called CNOC that makes hydration bladders with a cool closure feature on the backside that makes scooping up water really easy. But before I got these bottles specifically for this hike, I was using 1.5 liter bottles, 2 of them smart water bottles, and I've been using the same bottles for probably 3 years. That's really gross now that I said it out loud, but they held up. you don't have to worry about the durability. You don't have to worry about them popping like you might with a hydration sack or some sort of bladder. And the other thing that's really nice about smart water bottles, because they were one of the kind of earlier adopters or earlier options of lightweight ways to carry water, there's so many different attachments and things that are compatible with the specific threads that go in a smart water bottle. So this first I'll show you. This is one of my drinking bottles. Again, it's 1 liter smart water. Took the label off, took the little plastic ring off to save a couple grams. And then this lid is actually not a stock smart water lid. This is the bottle upgrade system made by Gossamer Gear. Again, I love Gossamer Gear, and I had an order, and these things are like $5 or something. So tossed it in there. Turned out to be a great buy. The thing that's great about these, they fit on the smart water bottle. They have this plastic extra cap. I don't know if I'm going to keep these long term because this is like a push pull opening system. I'm using the word system like it's super advanced. I mean, you've seen these before. These are like bug juice tops. So when it's pushed closed, no water is going to come out of there. So you don't really need this extra lid on top of it. However, I don't think it's ever a bad thing to have one extra measure to keep your water where it's supposed to be. I have had, so Smart Water does make squeeze, I guess, sport lids on some of their water bottles. I have had one of those break. And the way that those work, they have kind of a fold over lid. That's what keeps the water in. And then you can just squeeze it. And it's just like when that thing is flipped off, it's just an open hole. So if that lid breaks off, suddenly you can't keep your water with you. And that's, to me, a really scary idea because that's one of the fundamental things. You absolutely need water all the time. So if you can't carry it, then you're really limited on how far you can go or what you have to do to get to the next spot where you can get a bottle that works. So got these bottle upgrade kits. They're great. This is the same bottle. You'll notice this one's a lot taller. The reason for that, this black piece right here, this is the Sawyer Squeeze water filtration unit. There are, to my knowledge, 3 main water filters that Sawyer makes. There's the Squeeze, there's the Squeeze Micro, and there's the Mini. I used to have the Mini for probably 4 years or so, and had a lot of issues with it getting clogged up. So with any of these filtration systems, when you use them enough, stuff gets caught up in the filter and you have to do what's called back flushing it. So fortunately, with this bottle upgrade system, and again, with everything being compatible with Smart Water, it's super easy to back flush these filters because the little hole right here fits right where you need to back flush it, and then you can just apply pressure here and squeeze water through. But that's how you have to clean them out. And I bringing that all back. I'm saying that because the Sawyer Mini, I had a lot of issues with it getting clogged. By the end of its life, I was having to back flush it every single time I was getting water, and that takes a lot of time. And it's a lot of time that I'm not hiking, which really isn't what I'm interested in doing. I'm interested in hiking. So I've never used a Squeeze Micro, which is a little bit heavier than the Mini, but it's smaller and lighter than the full-size Squeeze. I have heard anecdotally that there's also some back flushing or filter issues with that particular model. So I just went for it with the Squeeze. I may regret that. I could have been fine with a Micro or even with a newer Mini, and maybe that would have been totally okay. But similar to bugs, water filtration is not something that I want to mess around with. There are people that don't filter any of their water on the AT, and they're totally fine. There are people that don't filter any of their water on the AT, and they also get Giardia or other nasty diseases that I just don't want to get and don't want to have to think about or deal with. So that's why I'm going to use this filter. It's great. You can drink directly out of it. You can squirt into other containers once you have your clean water in a bottle. 2 liters of capacity for drinking water is sufficient for the AT, in my opinion. If I get out there and I'm wrong, I can always upgrade. It's the other great thing about smart water bottles, as I mentioned earlier, you can literally get them anywhere. So if I need to get 1.5 liters or add a third bottle to the mix, that's very doable. But I don't think I will because there's water everywhere on the AT. It's super easy to get. It's generally pretty clean, a lot of spring-fed water. This container here, and there's a few things in it that I'm not going to talk about right now, but I'll talk about in a second. This is an Essentia 1 liter water bottle. that I cut the bottom off of. And what this is for scooping water up out of water sources. This was something that I saw that somebody on the PCT did and had really good luck with. I haven't used this in the past. I used to have a titanium cup that I would use. The thing that stinks about that is when you use your titanium cup to get dirty water out of a creek, if you're trying to be good about filtering your water, that thing, you can't really use it for anything else until you've cleaned it out. This is super lightweight, and I'm not going to worry about cleaning it between uses. I'm just only going to use it to scoop out dirty water, and it really doesn't cost me a lot in terms of weight. The reason I got this Essentia bottle is because it stacks really well with the Smart Water bottle. I didn't really think that through because, like I said earlier, I am going to be using these bottle rocket attachments on the front of the backpack. And I think that this is a little bit too wide to fit in there. And even if it did fit in there, when I went to pull it out, I think I would just pull this bottle out and I think this would get stuck in the bottle rocket. So I still think this is great. And I'm actually using it for something else, which is great too. So this scoop I'm going to use to hold anything that's sharp because again, you can get Essentia bottles anywhere. So if this gets a hole in it, it's not a big deal. So that's why it had a bunch of stuff in it. But I'm going to go ahead and put these water bottles in the bottle rockets, and then I'll talk more about what was in this cup. So let me flip the backpack over here. And similarly to packing the backpack, these bottle rockets are a lot easier to navigate when the water bottle is actually full of water. So apologies if this takes a second. That actually went quicker than I thought it would. This fits like just right. It can also fit these half-liter bottles, which is why the liter is kind of tight. But this is how it's going to sit on my back. It does kind of like it's kind of weird, especially this one since it is taller. It's kind of in my face. I don't know if that's going to bother me enough to do anything about it. But I mean, you can't beat it from a convenience standpoint because you can just grab a bottle and drink out of it. I've thought about potentially there's like a straw attachment to the Sawyer that would go down into the water bottle. So I thought about bringing that along just so that I could literally reach over and sip out of it. But I don't think it's worth the wait. So I'm not planning on doing it right now. So anyway, the water bottles are packed now. I use this to get water. I guess I'll go ahead and tell you about my backup water filtration system, even though it is a part of this ditty bag that we're going to unpack here in a second. So you've probably heard, if you've done any backpacking at all, you've probably heard of Aquamira. Aquamira is, as far as I know, it's really just bleach, but it's bleach that's kind of separate. So you mix it together and then it makes bleach and you can clean your water with it. So there's kind of three parts here to my backup water filtration system. I like using the Sawyer a lot more than I would like using Aquamira. I don't really like the idea of drinking a bunch of chemicals. Not that it's dangerous. I think it's pretty proven to be safe and has been used for a long time. But if something were to happen to the Sawyer, if the filter breaks, this is my backup because, again, I do take water filtration pretty seriously. These chemicals are light sensitive, so that's why one of them is in a black container. One of them is wrapped in electric tape just to keep the light out of it. Bought these bottles. All the bottles I'm going to show you I got from a company called Lightsmith. They have a ton of great stuff for ultralight backpacking. And then this third bottle is a mix bottle. So you basically, it takes a little bit for the two parts to mix. So the instructions tell you put this directly into your water and then wait for, an hour or 4 hours or whatever. But that's kind of a pain. So I have this mix bottle as well. So what you can do is drop these two in equal parts into the mix bottle and then let the mix bottle sit for however long it needs to sit and then drop this into your water once it's done. So you can go ahead and put like a whole day's worth of filtration into the mix bottle and not have to keep waiting and going through that cycle again. So this is the Aquamira repackaged. It's the liquid form. They also have tablets. You may have seen those before that you can just drop into your water. But that stuff sits in my first aid and hygiene bag. So that's my water carrying and filtration system. The next thing I'll talk about is the stuff that sits inside this. For the most part, with the exception of the stakes, they'll go in here too because they're sharp. But I'll talk about those when I talk about my shelter here shortly. So the first This blue guy right here, this is my trowel. So this is made by the Tent Lab. It's called the Deuce of Spades Ultralight Trowel. I don't know if I said towel before, but if I did, I meant to say trowel. This is like 15 grams or something stupid. And you use this to dig holes that you're going to defecate in, which is really important from a leave no trace perspective. You don't just want to poop on the ground. Animals will come and mess with it. You really need to dig a hole. So this is for digging cat holes. The other thing that's nice about it, it's got a little hole in the top. So if I ever needed an extra stake, if I lost one of my stakes or one of my stakes broke, you can stick this thing into the ground. This ground's kind of hard, but you get the idea. And then run your guy line through that hole and use it as a backup stake. So it's pretty sharp at the end to facilitate digging holes. It's going to sit in that cup. My spork is also going to sit in that cup. This is my eating utensil. You might think, hey, that's disgusting. It's a fair point, but it's really not. It's not as though this is ever going to have fecal matter on it. You dig the hole before you start doing your business, and then this is totally separate. So dirt doesn't make you sick. Poop does, but I'm not planning on eating anything that's touched poop. And then this little black thing, this lives in here for now. I may move it just to being kind of floating in the pocket, but I'm afraid of losing it. This is made by a company called Kulo Clean, and it is the ultralight bidet. I hope you're giggling because I am when I first heard about it, or I was when I first heard about it. And this is what this half-liter smart water bottle is for. Similarly, I took off the label. I took off the little ring. This just has a normal smart water cap, which I can also use as a backup cap if there were a failure in either of those caps. Again, because keeping your water is really important. So the way this works, you'd fill up this half-liter and put maybe a couple drops of soap in it. This bidet just kind of stuffs into there. It's got basically the diameter gets a little bit wider as you get further up. And you turn it upside down, and there's a slit right there. And when you apply pressure, it squirts water out of it. I'll leave you to visualize the details on that, but really excited to use that. This allows me to not have to take toilet paper with me. Again, with Leave No Trace, if I was going to take toilet paper, I would need to pack it out, and that's not a super appealing option to me. So between leaves and rocks and snow in some places, and then this guy, that's how I'm going to keep my underside clean. So I'll go ahead and put that in the cup and screw that on. So all this stuff is going to sit in one of these side pockets. It's a little bit loose, so I am definitely conscious of the fact that I need to kind of keep the backpack upright so none of that stuff falls out, especially that little bidet. But all of that fits in a side pocket, which is awesome. The next thing here, this is a knife. This is an Opinel number 7. These things are made in France. My dad gave me this one. His brother, my uncle Les, really liked these knives. And it turns out they're awesome for ultralight backpacking, and they're just awesome knives. So it's got a little locking collar that keeps it shut or open. Folds open like that. It's got a wooden handle. You lock that collar back so it's not going to close on your hand or anything. Shout out Baptist Children's Home. It's got the logo from my dad's business on the backside there. Cool little knife. I probably don't need this much knife, but again, my wife really wanted me to have a substantial, this isn't substantial, but a substantial size knife, just for, I guess, protection from something or other. And I am going to take this knife. It'll be good for food preparation. Cutting cheese can be difficult, especially some hard cheeses. So this will probably stay in one of my hip belt pouches, so it is going to be accessible if I do need it. The other thing I'll mention, I was having a really hard time. So I'm living down in Florida right now. It's really humid. I was having a hard time getting that locker to open and shut just because I think the wood had swollen up a little bit. And I read online to put a little bit of olive oil in it to lubricate it. And I did that, and it worked great, which kind of surprised me. Hopefully the olive oil won't like spoil or anything, but I think if it does, I'll be smelling worse than spoiled olive oil, so I'm not too worried about it. Another thing that's going to go in that hip belt zipper pouch. So the other one's going to have like the phone that I'm recording this on, credit card, debit card, ID, and probably some cash. I'm going to keep my headlamp handy as well, because again, this is something that I use a lot. If it's early in the morning, the sun hasn't come up, and I'm trying to get on the road or on the trail, I guess, use the flashlight. And then I like to night hike sometimes, and sometimes I need to night hike. if I'm trying to get somewhere, if I need to go get my mail, or if I'm running low on food and just need to get to the next town, may need to do some night hiking. This is the Nightcore NU25, also purchased from Lightsmith. I've used the Nightcore NU20 for quite some time, and it's awesome. And I broke the little attachment plate that attaches it to the headband. Lightsmith does these little bungee cord attachments, make it a little bit lighter than the stock headband. So I suspect eventually I know where this is going to fail, because this plate just kind of broke apart one day. But they're cheap. They're really bright. I won't turn it on because I think it's going to wash out the camera and then make it all funky after that. But super bright, super useful. My backup light is just my phone light. So if something were to happen to this, if it does, break, I mean, I can still carry it. I still have my other one. It's just not on a headband right now. Could use the phone light if needed, but am not planning to. So that's going to live in the hip belt for easy access. So I don't have to take my backpack off if it gets dark or if it's early in the morning, whatever. So I'm going to talk through my shelter stuff for a little bit, and then we'll talk about the ditty bag. I'll put away this Polycro ground sheet, and then we're almost done. So if you're still watching, kudos. I've had a lot of questions, and folks are like, you got to make a video. I'm guessing this is a long video. I don't know. I'm not looking at the time. But if you're still watching, awesome. I'll try to break it up by section or something on the YouTube video platform, I guess, just so you can see specific parts if you want to. But so let's move on to the shelter. So these are my trekking poles. Trekking poles are like walking sticks. They're super popular, I think, really across the board with hikers. Used to kind of get made fun of if you had them, but now they're pretty commonplace. So these are telescoping to extend, so you can adjust the height there. And for me, it's going to be when I'm walking pretty much like all the way up. It's got cork handles, all cork, which I really like. So that's going to absorb the sweat from my hands, and it's really lightweight. It's got these straps on it to kind of keep them on your hands. I may end up cutting these off just to save some weight, but I'm going to start with them and see if I really need them or not. The reason that I'm telling you about them as a part of my shelter is because I'm using this tarp that relies on these trekking poles or some sort of other structure to be hung from. These trekking poles are the Gossamer Gear LT5. I don't know what LT stands for, but they've had various iterations through the years. This is the most recent one. They're super lightweight. I think these are made out of like carbon fiber or something, and then obviously the cork is super light as well. You'll notice this one, I wrapped the top of the handle with probably, 10 or 15 turns of duct tape. Duct tape is really useful. I've got a few other types of tape that I'll show you in a second that have more specific uses, but the duct tape is kind of catch-all. The thing that I don't like about duct tape is it tends to leave a residue behind when you ultimately do take it off. So like if I was going to use it for tarp repair or for backpack repair, or on my skin even, when you do take it off, it kind of leaves behind. It says, hey, I was here, which can be cool, but it's not, then it's sticky forever, which isn't as cool. So those are the trekking poles. And like I said, the trekking poles support my poncho tarp. So you probably noticed when we talked about clothes, I did not talk about a rain jacket. So this is a new piece of gear for me. This one came in the mail only a few weeks ago. I've been testing it a ton in the backyard. I am super, super, super excited about it. I'm not new to tarp camping. So when I say tarp, it's what you're thinking of, but it's made of a lighter material than you're probably thinking of. You're probably thinking of like a big blue painter's tarp. This is made out of sil nylon. It's made by Mountain Laurel Designs. They also make a DCF version, which DCF is a little bit lighter fabric than sil nylon, but it doesn't stretch and it doesn't compact very well. You can't really press it down from a volume standpoint. I've only used sil nylon tarps, so I can't comment on using a DCF tarp. But I can say that the idea of it was not appealing enough to me to be worth, I think it's $150 upcharge for the poncho tarp in particular to go with the DCF model. And it does have its drawbacks, but there are also benefits. One of them being you don't have to seam seal it. So this is a garment that I seam sealed. Shout out Brian for telling me to dilute my seam sealer with mineral spirits before I did it. That made it a lot easier, and it seems to have worked pretty well. So when you have a garment where the holes in the garment are that the thread goes through and it goes under tension, those holes expand and water can get through them. So you have to put this silicone adhesive goo on all of your seams. That was a similar process to what I had to do for those event mitts. It was a different compound, but same idea. The event mitts I had to do with a toothpick, and so I was terrified to do this bad boy, but with a diluted seam sealant and a paintbrush, it was an afternoon activity, and it wasn't bad at all. I think it looks pretty good. Um, so this poncho tarp, I keep calling it a poncho tarp because it is both my shelter for sleeping to keep the rain off when needed. It also acts as my rain jacket as well as my pack cover when there is rain while I'm hiking. So it's pretty cool. I'm going to definitely try to make another video about the specifics of how to pitch it and how it works. But there's basically a hood in the middle of your tarp that rolls up into the tarp. So when it's not in tarp mode, it hangs over you like a poncho would, and then you have this elastic belt that kind of keeps it all tight or cinched tight. And so that would go over me, and it would also go over my backpack. So it's an additional level of waterproofing against the elements when I am hiking. So again, super excited about this one. It took a long time to get here, but it was definitely worth the wait. Um, if you are interested in trying out a tarp, the tarp that I've used for a few years before getting this poncho tarp is made by Bora Gear. So the same folks that made the bug bivy that I'll be taking with me. John from Bora Gear, again, is awesome. He's the man. Shoot him an email and tell him what you're thinking about, and he'll tell you what he can do. Um, it was great. It really taught me how to get into tarp camping, and it's only like 50 or 60 bucks. This was a little bit more expensive, but it does have more uses. It's a little bit smaller than the Bora Gear tarp, so getting used to that will be interesting. But you can pitch it in a number of ways depending on if you really need storm protection versus wind protection versus you just want something over your head for light drizzle or light wind, whatever. So the way that this thing gets pitched is using these stakes and these guy lines over here. So these stakes are Mountain Safety Research carbon core stakes. Each one of them weighs something stupid like 5 grams or I don't know. I keep them together with a rubber band. Um, I have 9 of these, and I have 9 links of guy line. The links of guy line are in 2 variants. So I have one that's made for the ridge line. So if you can imagine, these 2 trekking poles are holding up the tarp. The lines that go down from them are the longest by necessity. So I've got 2 that are a little bit longer here, and then the rest are shorter. So those are each one like wingspan. These are each like 2 wingspans. Particularly for the ones that will be tying out like the corners of my tarp or the sides of my tarp. Those are probably a little bit longer than they need to be, which I'm okay with. I'd rather use them a bunch and then slowly trim them down over time than go something that's 3 feet long that gives me problems on the first night. So I expect I'll probably trim them down gradually at some point. It's pretty easy with the guy line material. You can just snip them and then burn the end. So that's how the shelter system works. These don't go in the backpack. I'll be carrying them. They're part of my worn weight because I'll be using them as walking sticks while I'm actually hiking. But you can fasten them onto the backpack. So the backpack has, let me flip it back over. It's got a couple small loops here on the bottom that the end of the trekking poles can stick in, and then you just fasten them through um, one of these pieces of webbing, and that keeps them secure if I want to carry them on my back. But I'm not expecting to do that because I really like hiking with trekking poles. I think it takes a lot of pressure off of your knees and some of your other joints. So because these are sharp, I keep them in that cup with my trowel and my spork. And if they poke a hole in it, so be it. That's fine. All of these guy lines I keep wound up, so I'm not worried about them getting knotted. And I keep them in this other side pocket with the clothesline. And obviously the clothesline could be used as a guy line if needed, or vice versa, I suppose. So I've got 9 stakes. I've got 9 guy lines. When I pitch this tarp in storm mode, which is what I'm choosing to call it, I don't know if it has a better name than that, but it's really the most like batten down the hatches. It's really coming down outside. I do use all 9. Every other pitch that I do, I use 8 or sometimes 6. The main pitches that I plan to use are A-frame with 6 pegs, A-frame with 8 pegs, a half pyramid, which takes 8. You could do it with 6, but it kind of collapses in. And that storm mode that I was just talking about that takes 9. So this thing, I again, no stuff sack. It's going to dry. It's going to get wet, so it's going to need to dry out here. It needs to be easy to access. When it does start raining, I need to pull it out so it just lives in this outside pocket. And that brings us to our last little grouping of stuff here, which is the Ditty sack. So this is everything that's doesn't go in one of these places that we've just talked about. A lot of small dinky stuff. But I'm just going to run through the stuff quickly, and then we'll be done. So I already told you, I guess let me start by saying this all fits into a 1-gallon Ziploc. You'll see that each of these is kind of compartmentalized into a smaller sandwich bag style Ziploc. The reason for that is twofold. So there's a couple of things in these bags that I really, really don't want to get wet. And this stuff is not going to be inside the Nyloflume. Or maybe it will be. I haven't quite decided yet. We'll see how everything fits. But in any case, it's one extra level of waterproofing. It doesn't weigh a lot. The other great thing about this gallon bag, I talked earlier about doing laundry when I'm out on the trail. I'll go into town and do laundry, but I have a clothesline and I have a gallon bag Ziploc so that I could do laundry when I'm actually on the trail. So this will just take, probably one article of clothing at a time, some water, some soap, massage it around inside the bag, hang it out to dry, and hopefully that'll extend the lifespan of some of my more sensitive articles of clothing. And then it's great for organization because it fits all of this stuff kind of in their own little Ziplocs in this bigger Ziploc so I can keep stuff straight. So I'm going to start off by talking about hygiene and first aid. So this is kind of the first category of stuff, or at least how I'm thinking about it. I already told you about the Aquamira, so I'm not going to go into detail on that. I'm going to go ahead and pull that stuff out. This is my toothbrush. It's a bamboo toothbrush with charcoal bristles. My father-in-law helped me cut it down to being pretty small and sanding down the end so it's kind of rounded. You don't need a whole toothbrush. This is probably the first thing that I ever heard about ultralight backpacking from my dad when I was a kid, was that there's these crazy guys that cut their toothbrushes so they can save some grams. So it feels like a rite of passage that I cut this toothbrush down. You don't need the whole toothbrush. I've tried the little tiny toothbrushes or like the finger bristles. They don't work super well for me, so I like having the full size, especially on a trip this long where it's not like just a weekend trip where if you skip brushing your teeth once or twice, it's not a big deal. With that, I've got toothpaste. This is a travel size toothpaste. I'll buy new ones or refill it, whatever, when I go into town. I could go smaller on that as well, but again, I think that oral hygiene is really important. So did choose to bring a little bit larger of a toothpaste container. While we're talking about oral hygiene, this is floss. This is a full-size floss container, which you're probably like, that's not very ultralight of you. However, it's not just useful for being floss. Floss is really strong. So if I were in a really tight pinch, I could use it as a guy line. I could use it to do some small repairs, sewing things. There's a lot of other uses. Anything that I'm using some of this, ultralight guy line for, I could use the floss for. Probably not as effectively, but it would work in a pinch. So full-size container of floss. Again, I'll pick up new ones in town as needed. I've got a little bag of pills. This has got, I think, 8 Tylenol, 4 Imodium, and 3 Claritin. I've got pretty bad allergies, so if anything were to set those off, I'm well equipped. I've got a little mini comb. This isn't necessary, but I do think if I'm going to town or if I'm going to go visit friends, I would like to comb my hair and look a little more presentable. This is repackaged 100% DEET from Bins. So the same folks that made my bug head net also make bug spray. The container is from Lightsmith, like all the other tiny containers. Again, I'm going to try not to use a ton of this stuff, but I have it if I need it. This little jar is filled with something called Gurney Goo. So it's a lubricant that has antibacterial properties. So you can think of this doing what Body Glide does, but it also does what Neosporin does. So if I have any wounds or cuts, scrapes, whatever that I needed to keep clean, I could use this stuff. It's in a mini jar from Lightsmith. This is a smart water bottle top that I poked 5 holes in. This is what I'll use to shower. So that same half-liter bottle that I showed you for my bidet will also act as my shower with this lid on top of it. Um, I like this because if for some reason, if you can't tell, I definitely don't want to not have a way to close my bottles. It's definitely something that's happened to me before, and it's not fun. So if something were to happen and I needed a backup bottle top, I can tape the top of this and cover those holes and use it for a short amount of time until I got to the next place that had smart water bottles for sale, which again is pretty much everywhere. Um, I've got a little thing of lip balm. I don't know that I'm going to keep this the whole time. It's made by Joshua Tree. I took the label off. I think I picked it up from Gossamer Gear or Lightsmith on one of my orders. I suspect that Gurney Goo can do everything that this lip balm can do. I don't know if you're supposed to ingest it, so I won't try. I don't use lip balm all that frequently anyway, but it does have other uses. This is also antibacterial. It's got some sun protection in it. Um, it would be a good lubricant if I needed that and didn't have the Gurney Goo. It's just good to have. Last little bottle here. This is some sunscreen. As mentioned, I'm going to try not to use a ton of sunscreen, mostly go with physical barriers to the sun. The AT is pretty covered with trees anyway, so I'm not super worried about it. But if the need should arise, I definitely don't want to be getting roasted out there because skincare is important. And then lastly, I've got 3 4-inch by 4-inch squares of gauze and 6 strips that are about 4 inches long of Leuco tape. So I mentioned earlier some more specialized types of tape. This stuff is awesome. You can stick it to your skin and it'll stick for like 2 weeks. It doesn't matter if you get it wet. It doesn't matter what happens to it. Leuco tape is awesome. I don't have any Band-Aids because I have gauze and Leuco tape, so I can make my own Band-Aids if I need to. I can use this stuff on blisters, really whatever it needs to be used on. So that's all of my first aid and hygiene items. So I'm going to repack these things right quick. And there's no order to this. Really, I put in the gauze and the Leuco tape first, just because they take up the volume of the bag, or at least the height and width of it, maybe not the depth. And the rest of the stuff just kind of sits on top of it. So close that up. I'm going to see how long these Ziploc bags will last. I have no expectation they'll last the entire trip, but maybe they will, and that'd be a cool thing to brag about to your friends, I guess, or to my friends. I don't know. You could brag to your friends about me doing it. The next small bag in my ditty bag I'm going to talk about, these are tools and repair items. So the first thing here, these are 3 3-inch by 3-inch sections of Gear Aid tenacious tape. So this is another type of specialty tape. Honestly, it does everything that duct tape does, but it does it better. I have jackets that I have put a piece of tenacious tape on and then washed them multiple times, and it still sticks. I could use this to repair my tarp. I could use it to repair my backpack. Wouldn't be useful for like medical situations. So I've got the Leuco tape, and I do have a lot of backup duct tape around this stuff. It came on a roll. I just cut it into sheets because I thought it was a little bit easier to pack and a little bit lighter. I didn't need the entire roll. I've got a few items in here that collectively make up the Thermarest repair kit for inflatable sleeping pads. So if I do get a hole in my sleeping pad like I did with my old one, I can patch it up with this in the field. I also like it comes with 2 alcohol wipes that you're supposed to clean the pad with before you apply the patch. So these obviously are useful for first aid as well. So anything that does more than one thing is good in my book. I've got some mini scissors from Lightsmith. I mentioned earlier I didn't know that I would need a knife. Since I've started carrying these, I use my knife a lot less frequently. There's just a lot of stuff that you use a knife for that you could do better if you had some scissors, but no one wants to take scissors in a backpack because they're huge. But these are tiny. They have a little cover, so I'm not worried about them poking anything. They're great. This is an extra O-ring for my Sawyer filter. So this is what goes between the filter and the bottle and keeps it flush, keeps water from leaking out. Over time, they do get dried out and cracked and get leaks. That just happens. I think with really any O-ring, that's kind of the point of them. So an extra one of those. I've got 2 lighters that I'm planning to take. They're both Bic Minis. They're both wrapped in duct tape. I don't know if you can see it, but this one says needle on it. in EEDLE. The reason for that, underneath the first wrap, I guess the last wrap, but the first one as you're unwrapping it of duct tape, I actually have a needle in here. I mentioned sewing earlier with the floss, so I have a needle that has an eye large enough to accommodate a piece of floss, and that way I don't have to worry about it poking a hole in anything, so I just keep it wrapped underneath this duct tape. Duct tape can never have enough. Wrap these lighters up in it. The reason I have two, I think it's important to carry a backup fire starter anytime you're going hiking. Maybe not for like a day trip, but like anything overnight. If one of them runs out of gas or breaks or I lose it or something, I don't want to not be able to start a fire, especially if there was a safety situation that required me to start a fire to stay warm. Um, that said, I have had so much better luck starting fires with lighters than I have with matches or flint and steel. Um, there is more stuff that can fail with these as opposed to those other items, but I know for a fact that I'm better at using these. I'm more well equipped to use these in sticky situations. So I'm just taking two big lighters, and I trust that'll work. If one of them fails, again, it's another super easy item to get at any gas station. So that's all my tools and repair items. So I'll just put these back in their little sandwich bag. The last bag here are electronics and technology. Now, I mentioned the phone that I'm recording this video with, my AirPods. Those will also, well, my phone will be in one of the hip belt pouches. The AirPods go like right here. These are in a Ziploc bag that doesn't close, but I really like it because the items that are in here, so I've got a battery, a wall outlet charger, and three cables. And this wall outlet charger, I guess I'll talk about first. It's got these two pointy things, obviously, where it plugs into the wall. And I don't want these poking holes in my stuff. So the way that all that stuff is situated inside this plastic bag, there's really no way for them to poke holes in anything. I've seen where people will get pieces of styrofoam to put a cover on these. I just didn't want to fool with it. So for now, I'm going to use this bag, even though it doesn't really offer water protection. But like I said, this is going to be inside this gallon bag, which is going to be inside, a layer of nyloflume, which is going to be inside a backpack, which if it starts raining is going to be underneath my poncho tarp. So I'm confident it's not going to get wet. If I found one that was a little bit taller, but that was the same width and depth, I would get it in a heartbeat. It's a little bit thicker than my other Ziplocs. I don't know what originally came in this. I could switch them to a sandwich bag, but then they wouldn't have the benefit of keeping this from poking stuff. So I'm using this for now. May change it up later. Um, this is an Anker 10,000 milliamp hours battery. This can charge my phone probably 3 or 4 times. It also needs to charge the Garmin as needed. My headlamp charges by USB. The AirPods need to be charged. My phone needs to be charged if I didn't already say that. Um, but it can do a lot, and my phone's not going to be searching for signal most days. I'm going to have it on airplane mode, so I expect my phone by itself will probably last at least 2 days and then can recharge 3 times. So this can get me a pretty far away, and then I'll go into town and recharge this as needed. Um, this wall outlet I struggled with. This is also made by Anker. I don't recall. I think it's the PowerPort 2. Yeah, PowerPort Speed 2. It's got two quick charging USB ports. It's super heavy, and I hate that because it's awesome besides that, but it weighs like 4 or 5 ounces. I thought about just getting like the little Apple wall charger. The problem with that is it takes a long time to recharge this battery, so I'd pretty much have to stay in town overnight when I wanted to fully recharge it. That's not an appealing option. With this, I can charge the battery in about 4 hours. It also has two USB quick charge, which is also really important to me because I want to be able to recharge my battery and my phone at the same time. This effectively gives me an extra batteries or an extra phone's worth of battery because when I go into town, I can recharge my battery and my phone at the same time and don't have to worry about, okay, I just recharged my battery. Now I immediately need to turn around and recharge my phone because it's dead as well when I get back on the trail. But all that stuff, the quick charging, the two ports, comes at the expense of weight. So this thing is really heavy, but I think it's worth it. I'm not going to stress about it. A couple extra ounces, and it actually is easier to fit in here when I put that in first. And then I have 3 cables. They're all pretty short. I don't know where they all came from. Um, I've got a couple backups of these because I think sometimes they are known to fail, but this one's for Apple products. This one's for micro USB, so the Garmin and the headlamp. And this one's for USB-C because that's what the power bank, the battery actually charges with. So all 3 of these kind of sit toward the top of this bag, and then the AirPods can fit right in there. Lastly, I didn't know where to put them, so they just float around in my ditty bag, is a set of earplugs. You never know if I end up camping. There's shelters along the AT. If I end up camping in shelters with strangers that snore, or if I'm by myself and the wilderness sounds are freaking me out, earplugs are great for that. So another thing that's really easy to replace if they get lost or messed up, whatever. So that's my ditty bag. That's all the little extra stuff that doesn't go somewhere else. Um, and that does, I can't remember, I may have said earlier that would not be in the Nyloflume bag. I actually do plan for it to be in the Nyloflume bag, but because of the way I've been packing this backpack, I'm not sure there's room for it, which is fine. But it just sits in the top here and gets sealed up like that. You're probably thinking my backpack looks super full. It's because I've been packing it sitting down instead of standing over it. It's not actually that full. It's just the quilt in the bottom of it is more expanded than it would normally be because I didn't push it down from the top at all. So that is all the stuff that goes in the backpack. This is the Polycro ground sheet. I think this material was originally used for painters' tarps or some sort of painter's material. You can get it at hardware stores. I got these from one of these cottage companies. I have an extra one if Glory needs to send it to me. And this just goes underneath whatever I'm sleeping on for that extra layer of protection. These are like $2. So if this gets a hole in it, it's not a big deal. It's a lot better than my bivy getting a hole in it or my sleeping pad getting a hole in it or whatever. So this will be the bottom layer. It compresses down super small. It weighs next to nothing. When I'm actually packing my backpack, it's actually going the bottom of this big mesh pocket because I want to be able to get my poncho tarp out and not have to fiddle with this if it starts raining. But since this is just a video for fun, I'm just going to put it in the very top here. And that's it. So if you have any questions or comments or thoughts on any of the gear, let me know. Like I said, that Lighterpack link is going to be both in the description of the YouTube video as well as on the blog post. So that will have the specific weights of every single item that I just showed you. And it's pretty cool, some visualizations in terms of what weighs what and how everything's broken out. And that all in weighs 10 pounds and 12 ounces, plus a little bit because some of my worn weight items, some of the clothing items that I put in here would not be included in that 10 pounds and 12 ounces. But very lightweight. I would stand up and show you, but then I'd be out of frame. So if you've made it this far, again, thank you so much for your time. I hope that this was informative or useful to you. I hope that it sparks an interest in you to try out ultralight backpacking or backpacking in general. I love to talk about gear, so if you want to talk about it, just let me know, drop me a line, and happy to chat more on it. This is my first video, so thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.